Are we good to go?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, before calling the meeting to order, can I please ask commissioners to refrain from using the chat feature on Zoom? All questions should be made publicly unless there's a computer connectivity issue. Would one of the commissioners here would like to conduct a pule? Can I get someone who would feel comfortable doing that? Might move on from that if no one wants
That's
to take
fine.
Aloha, mai kako. Good morning, everyone. The hybrid meeting of the Cultural Resources Commission will now come to order. Quorum has been established with, I see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members in attendance.
Correct.
Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. It is 10:03 a.m. Pursuant to Act 220, Sessions Law of Hawaii 2021, which amended the Sunshine Law to allow meetings to be remotely conducted online effective January 1, 2022, the Cultural Resources Commission will host a hybrid meeting of online and in-person participants. An in-person location has been identified on the agenda for the public to provide testimony on agenda items and to view the meeting. This meeting can also be viewed live online. A link to the YouTube live stream is provided on the county website. The video recording will remain on the YouTube channel for those who are not able to watch it live. Reports and surveys reviewed during the hearing are available on the county website. Commissioners, please be reminded that only one person may speak at a time. Raise your hand to be recognized if you have a question or comment. Commissioners, please introduce yourselves and report if others are present in your location. I'll go first. My name is Matthew Clark, and I am alone in my office. Aloha.
Hi, aloha. My name is Kelo Kini, and I am alone in my office. Okay, thanks.
Natalie.
Hello, Kako, Natalie Kurishima. I'm also alone in my office.
Scott.
Hello, Scott Mahoney. I'm at home alone.
And Janet, please.
Hi, I'm home in my office alone.
CRC staff support joining us today are Kevin Sullivan, planner, Kim Tanaka, planner, Ashley DeVera, board secretary, and Jean Campbell, deputy corporation counsel. Pursuant to HRS 92.3, interested persons who want to provide oral testimony may do so either at the beginning of the meeting when the board takes public statements on the agenda or immediately before the specific agenda item is called. Staff, please indicate if there are any members of the public wishing to provide public testimony online or in person.
Not that I'm aware of, but just polling everybody that's on Zoom right now that see if anybody wants to submit testimony that may not be a presenter. Most names I recognize. Anybody want to submit testimony? So no, it doesn't sound like it. Yeah, Chair, I think everybody that's on Zoom is here is from HDOT for the bridge program, so no testimony.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just had a little technical difficulty, but I'm back.
That's fine.
Okay, well then we're on to the business of the commission. And the first agenda item is Hawaii Historic Bridge Program Update. I believe folks from HDOT are here to provide a presentation and answer questions.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is just real quick, and HDOT will, of course, give you much better information, but the bridge program, statewide bridge program has presented to CRC in the past several years. So this is a continuation and update of that. So I want to thank them ahead of time for taking this time to bring this to us. And yeah, if you're fine, Chair, we can hand it right over.
Yes,
to them.
please.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ikaika Kincaid. I am alone in my office. I'm sitting in Honolulu. I have Barbara Scheidler, who's also part of our team. I'll be doing the presentation. Pua Ayu is our, oh, here she is right now, logging on. She is our HDOT project manager. Pua, you want to say anything before we start? We're just starting right now.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties, so you can't see my picture, but you can see my bird, which is much nicer looking than I. Ikaika will do the presentation, and thank you for having us here. So yeah, let's just start.
Okay, I am, hopefully I can share this screen correctly. All right, so you guys should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to try and run through it as fast as I can. There is a lot of information here. If you have any questions at the end, we can circle back. I'm assuming I have about 10 minutes. Is that correct or so?
At least, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, great. All right, yeah, so as mentioned, this is coming back to you guys. I think we met with you guys a while back. We have a slide that shows our timeline on this project. So this is a National Historic Preservation Act Section 106 programmatic agreement for Hawaii Historic Bridge Program, which we're calling the agreement. We're working, Consor Engineers, Mason, Hunter Research, and Honua Consultants are our main consultants working on this project through HDOT. Let me get this. There we go. So the signatories that we do have, FHWA, SHPD, ACHP, Army Corps of Engineers. We also have HDOT and all the counties as well will be signatories to this agreement. Right now, our concurring and consulting parties are National Trust, HHF, and NHOs, which we don't actually have any NHOs that have been participating at this point. The agenda that I'll be presenting today, consultations to date, the purpose of the agreement, the scope, and then the PA, the supporting documents, just real highlights for each one of those as we go through it. Yeah, as mentioned, consultation efforts to date. You can see we started back in February, right before COVID happened. Obviously had that affected everybody. So we didn't get back out to the public for our first public stakeholders meeting until, let me get my laser pointer here, until, January 2021. And, slowly made our way through. We had a second draft that was published. We had kind of an interim third draft that was presented in February 2024. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then we just finalized our final draft, which is dated January 2nd, 2025. So that's what we'll be presenting to you guys today. So really the purpose is to, undertake minor projects that had no adverse effect on historic bridges. That's the goal, the main goal. Yeah, efficiently deliver federally funded repair and maintenance projects at the state and local levels. Streamline implementation, review, reporting for minor historic bridge projects that have no adverse effect on historic properties. Encourage adoption of best practices for historic bridges, types and materials, and obviously ensure safe public transportation. So the PA will address ongoing maintenance, repair, and minor rehabilitation. Obviously, federal regulations, specifically 106, as it pertains to NHPA and implementation of that regulation there. We also have, because 106 and 6E kind of go together, we are trying to also include state regulations for 6E, which cannot technically be part of the this federal 106 agreement, but we can include it as an attachment. So we prepared a MOU that will be attached with this. And I'll show you guys that when we get there. Does not apply to major bridge rehabilitation or replacement projects. And projects with an adverse effect to historic property. So those are the two big ones that will kick a bridge out of the agreement. We created, I don't know if you guys remember this, but we created a tiered activity list. So tier 1 has the lowest level, which basically no effect to historic properties. Tier 2 is activities requiring the use and application of a guidance manual, which we prepared, which we're calling the best practices manual, to achieve an outcome of having no adverse effect. So that is really the guidance manual is really the nuts and bolts, aside from the language of the agreement here, or that we want everybody to follow. Tier 3 is a higher level, where this activity requires not only the application of the guidance manual, but also a review of the activity by a qualified person, Secretary of the Interior qualified professional, to achieve an outcome of having no adverse effect. Right? So yeah, they need to follow this strictly so that there is no effect to historic properties with the proper treatment. And you'll see some of that a little bit later. And then, of course, what is not included, activities requiring additional approval and not covered in this PA. This is just a list of the table of contents that we do have. Couple of things to point out. We have one for emergency situations. Identification and treatment of human remains. We have a chapter on that. We have an annual review, auditing and reporting. Additional consulting parties for specific undertakings, the durations in there. Transition, dispute resolution, and withdrawal and termination, as well as execution of this agreement in counterparts. Oh, yeah, and then what I've been doing with these presentations is just kind of showing everybody kind of what, like, a typical, like, this is a spall repair to an underdeck of a soffit. This would be considered a spall repair under tier 1. Okay, these are the appendices and attachments. So the appendices are considered part of the agreement and cannot be changed or modified. The attachments are technically not considered part of the agreement and could be modified more easily than the appendices. And that was FHWA thing we had to work through with them with this agreement. So the tiered activity matrix is part of it. And that's kind of the like a summary sheet of the tiered activities, the best practices manual, and our compliance form. So the compliance form is the paper documentation that would satisfy section 106 when using this agreement. Okay. Attachment 1 is the historic bridge list. A new one was just prepared, and that's dated 2024, and that's the new Hawaiʻi State Historic Bridge Inventory update. So I think you guys might be seeing some of that or have seen this already. That is coming out the same time as this one, so that will be attachment 1 is the bridge list. What we have attached currently is correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara, is the attachment from the 2013.
No, we have the 2024.
Okay,
Yeah, we have the list, not the entire document, but
Okay.
the list of bridges by county or district.
gotcha. So we were able to get the new updated list into our agreement. Thanks, Barbara, for that. Oh,
It's still in draft. It has not been formally, it's under consultation at the same time as this agreement. So it has not been formally accepted by SHPD, but it's the one that we're working with because it's the most current information.
so both of these two are coming out at the same time. Attachment 2 is our consulting parties, and then attachment 3 is the MOU for 6E between SHPD and HDOT. And I got some more photos here to show you guys. So this would be considered, motor repair would be a tier 2 activity. This is scour protection repair, which would be a tier 1 activity. Okay, now the programmatic agreement documents the general concept for our minor repairs. They've been categorized by material type rather than bridge element. So most repairs typically follow the same procedure regarding the element being repaired or the location of the repair. So what we're talking about is like concrete spall repairs. They're all done the same way. And then I have a list of the types of elements that would be considered, concrete beams, girders, diaphragms, abutments, wing balls, et cetera, et cetera. Steel, again, similar types of repair for steel members, and these are the types of elements of the bridge that you might have that are steel members: girders, floor beams, diaphragms, cross bracings, et cetera. Stone masonry, replacing missing stones and grout to match existing, stone abutments, wing walls, footing, piers, railings, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last one would be wood. So the way the repairs activities are designed is more for the material type as opposed to the element of the bridge per se. All right, these are just some more examples so you guys can kind of see what we're talking about here. So this area of undermining here of the bridge, it's a tier 1 activity if we install micro piles or scour protection. All of this debris that got plugged up in this one bridge over here, that's a tier 1 activity for debris removal. Stone masonry repair where we have a bunch of voids and missing stones along the bottom would be a tier 2, where you'd want to follow the guidance manual there. Member replacement, right? So this member's got some major section loss. This would be a tier 3 activity. For member replacements, we need to be careful not to consider a bunch of member replacements as a tier 2 activity, right? Because cumulative effect and so on and so on. Wearing surface and paving, this would be a tier 2 activity where you want to follow the guidance manual. This one here has got 2 things going on. We have railing and parapet repairs, which would be this decorative concrete portion of the bridge railing here. That's a tier 3 activity for concrete. And then this steel guardrail attachment that's all damaged, that would be a tier 2 activity. So you can have multiple levels of activities and still fall within the guidance of this manual. Here's some more examples. This is concrete cores samples. So that's a tier 2 activity for testing. It's another one, geotechnical borings. Those are tier 1s. This one here where you see this crack, this whole area is delaminated on this inside face of this bridge railing. This is a two-part one as well, where, you know, we have paint and coating of concretes, a tier 1 activity. And then concrete spall repair is a tier 3 for this, where we would want them to match the texture on that one there. Graffiti removal, tier 2. Navigational lights, you know, this lights over here is broken, tier 1. Freestanding signage, signs associated with the bridge, like one lane bridge ahead, load posting signs like this one, which could be away from the bridge, not actually at the bridge. We have some guidance in there, and that would be a tier 1 activity. All right, here's just a screenshot of the compliance form. That's which would be, if you look over here, this completed compliance form is your no adverse effect project determination under section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So whoever is using the PA is required for a bridge, you know, repairs, minor activity repairs, would be required to fill out this document and file it with HDOT. And then we are going to have to provide all of these documentations to SHPD during the first year of the agreement on a 6-month cycle. So once the PA is initiated, signed off, comes into action, we submit a batch to SHPD. They'll review it, and then again a year later, and then year 2, 3, and 4 would be a yearly submittal of the compliance forms to SHPD. Here's just another screenshot of the MOU, which is for the 6E. So it's not a big document. And all of these signatories will be required to sign this document as well. And all of these documents are in the package that you guys were sent. If you guys want to look at it a little closer. Archaeological clear zone. So a lot of activities that you may have seen have some ground disturbing activities to them. So we are proposing a archaeological clear zone for some of these activities. And basically, actually, it's probably better if I show you this picture first. So this is kind of what we're talking about here. This is original as-built plans from a historic bridge on the Big Island. And as you can see, they did do some excavation to get the piers installed. And so we are calling that the archaeological clear zone because it has already been previously disturbed. And so any work within this area to address issues with the foundation or scour issues or anything like that would be allowed within that archaeological clear zone. So that's kind of what this first one says. Ground disturbing activities for qualifying no adverse effect project, including scour countermeasures. Foundation repairs may take place within a strict 10-foot archaeological clear zone as measured from the furthest edge of the superstructure and substructure of the existing historic bridge structure. We also have another situation where there are old bridge abutments or piers or retaining walls, flues, irrigation structures, which we're calling remnant structures, which have been left in place, and then a new bridge is constructed over it, but those elements remain for one reason or another. We're basically, this PA would allow for 3 options, you know, avoidance of the remnant structure, minor repairs of the remnant structure following the guidance manual, And then, obviously this agreement does not apply because the remnant structure cannot be avoided. Or major repairs are required. So that kicks it out. And then we talk about those freestanding signages here. So we have some limitations on the diameter and the depth that those can get driven down. And then we also have something for laydown yards for contractors to be aware of when working on the bridges. Okay, yeah, yeah, so this would be a stream diversion. We got this leaning wall over here, that would be a tier 1 activity. And channel lining, scour protection, where it's previously been installed would be a tier 1 activity as well, repairing that issue there. Just some of the other stuff included in the package we sent you. This is our comment sheet that we would like you guys to fill out and have a consolidated and resolve any conflicting comments that you commissioners may have, to just resolve that before it gets sent to us. And if you could put it into this Excel file that we have included in the package. And yeah, next steps. Yeah, so this past January, everything got sent out. February to March, we're doing consultant meetings, and we want to get the comments by the end of March is our goal, to get those back from you guys by then. And then, April to June, we'll be addressing the comments and then trying to finalize the document for signature. And I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'll open it up to any questions.
Can I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you for the presentation. I have a question, if I can just jump right in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I actually have a couple questions. And thank you guys for putting this together. As someone who works on a lot of these bridge projects with HDOT, it can be very challenging sometimes. And so it's nice to see that some of this stuff is going to be streamlined. I guess one of my questions is, when this goes into effect, will any ongoing Section 106 projects, will it apply to ongoing Section 106 projects, or those need to be completed as they're going, would be one of my first question. The second one is, who fills out the compliance verification forms? And if you can maybe just run me through like a hypothetical kind of, this is how we envision it working. And then I was hoping you could just touch on the MOU just a little bit. It seemed just those were my 3 questions. Thank you.
That first question actually is a pretty good one. I don't know if we've thought that out yet on if there's a bridge that is currently in 106 consultation and this agreement comes out, could that project manager use this agreement? Well, what do you think? I guess I would assume yes, if the activities.
I thought we had language in there about it. We don't, the road PA has language in there how to do this. So maybe we can steal the road PA's language. And
What does that say?
it says that you can, under specific circumstances.
Probably with notification to the people that you're consulting with
Yeah.
initially on Section 106. I would imagine if your consulting parties agree, then you would be in the clear to use the PA and discontinue individual Section 106.
So we can certainly look at that and take the language from the road PA, because it does address it in the road PA.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, we need to be able to flex that for sure.
Yeah. So thank you for that question.
100%. Your second question about,
Compliance form.
I think that's got to go to Barbara.
So go back to the compliance form. The compliance form is intended to be completed by a qualified project manager, and that's either with HDOT or the county. They need to, the certified HDOT project manager, could be a county. Well, actually, it's the certified HDOT project manager with input from the counties if they're using this programmatic agreement. So this isn't for the public or for a consultant to complete. This is for the person responsible for Section 106 for the project. They would initiate a project I'm not that as familiar with the way that HDOT it initiates the funding, but they would propose a project, and the project manager, who, by the way, has to go through training in order to use the programmatic agreement. Training that's taught by Secretary of the Interior qualified professionals so that they understand what Section 106 is and how the best practices manual is applied. They would identify the activities that they're proposing under 3, the proposed tier activities, and they would list everything that's in our matrix or in the best practices manual is tier 1, 2, or 3. They're going to paint the bridge. They're going to do spall repair. They're going to reset some light fixtures, whatever the activity is. And they would identify those specifically in here. Under 2, the project description would be, again, the standard scope of work. And what is the trigger for Section 106? Is it federal funding? Is it a U.S. Army Corps permit? Or other kinds of funding? The state or county funding ties into the MOU, which I'll also address. And then there's standard documentation that you would do to initiate Section 106. You'd have the bridge location, the area of potential effect, and such. For the tier 1 and 2 activities, which are conventional repair and maintenance activities that meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, just the certified project manager would sign. For tier 3 activities where there's some gray area or it is subject to some evaluation or qualification, the HDOT or the counties would be required to contract with a SOI qualified professional who would sign off that they've reviewed the tier 3 activities and believe that there's no adverse effect. And then that's how the form gets completed. It gets filed with HDOT. They collate them, and at periodic intervals indicated in the programmatic agreement, they get submitted to SHPD. State Historic Preservation Division will monitor these very closely, the first couple of submittals, and make sure stuff's, it's being used properly, stuff's not getting through that shouldn't, and that they concur with the findings. And then the programmatic agreement will be allowed to continue. If there are disputes, or if they take exception to some of the work, there are mechanisms outlined in the programmatic agreement for them to take exception to what they've been set for review. Let's see. So that's how the compliance form is intended to be used. Let's look at the MOU.
Yeah,
The MOU,
real quick
okay, I'm
before
sorry.
you go on to that, Barbara, I did want to point out that the Army Corps is also a signatory to the PA. So if you have a state and county funded project, which is not Fed funds, but you require an Army Corps permit, you can use this PA for that.
To meet the Section 106
Yep.
Consultation requirements.
Yep.
And then what we've done is we've written a kind of a piggyback document here. This says that if it's no adverse effect under Section 106, it should be no historic properties affected under 6E. And we're hoping to get, we've talked with State Historic Preservation Division, and this is part of what we're hoping to get signed to streamline the review. Because even now, sometimes you're exempted from 106 and you're still doing 6E for some of these minor projects. So, of course, they have to follow the best practices, meaning the Secretary of the Interior standards. And it's only, again, minor repair and maintenance projects. It's not intended for wholesale bridge replacements or major work.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question. I guess that brings up one more follow-up question. I saw Janet has her hands up, so I'll turn it over to her after. So in the case, and I do run into this a lot, there's been 6E work done on the bridge. It had a no adverse effect no historic properties affected finding, would that then you wouldn't have to go through this process? Would it apply backwards, I guess is what I'm asking, to the section 106, or you'd still have to go through the form and redo all that? If it had gone through 60 already, say, and then there's federal funding.
I don't know that SHPD is going to allow this MOU to be used for section or 6E projects solely. Like if you have to
Okay.
do 6E and you're not doing 106, it doesn't apply. You have to be
Okay.
doing 106 first. And then the 6E is sort of the tag along with that. So it does not substitute for just state and county funded projects without a federal trigger.
Okay,
That's my understanding at this point.
Sorry.
that's all right. I thought I'd ask. Janet, go ahead.
Only.
Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Janet.
My question is, because I'm a plantation nerd, when you talked about remnant architecture that might be underneath some of the newer bridges, are you going to be documenting that and getting it a state inventory of historic place number if it doesn't have one already? If it's over 50 years old, you know, I'm just wondering.
You know, the thing is that the bridge inventories, under section 106, right, you're aware that one of the first steps is inventory and then evaluation. This programmatic agreement assumes that inventory and evaluation has been completed in the state historic bridge inventory. We're using that as step one. These remnant structures, one of the things that would need to be done is if we're potentially going to affect it, I think you would need to bring, you need to bring in an SOI qualified person to look at it and say, is this historic? And almost do a RLS kind of, review of it. And at that point, there is the opportunity to get a SIHP number for it. Because you would have to do the inventory and evaluation step if it's not in the inventory, the existing inventory. Yeah, it's a tier 3. So you'll have an SOI qualified person looking at it.
I'm just imagining most of them are over 50 years old, so they're going to fall into that historic. But I just was, hoping to get as much information documented as possible while you're doing the work. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, if you look through the guidance manual, there are a lot of activities that are tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 that could repair majority of the issues with some of these remnant structures. But again, yeah, if, like Barbara mentioned, it kind of needs to be in the bridge, associated with the historic bridge that we're repairing.
Yeah, certainly within the project area.
Yeah.
Right. We're not gonna, I don't think anyone's expecting to go up and down the street looking for things.
No, I was just
Yeah,
thinking,
I know.
like
Yeah.
I'm the county archaeologist from Maui, and I know Pua and everybody, they did a lot of work in the bridges out to Hana. So I was just wondering if you have that chance and you have these historic remnants in the project area, is there a chance to at least photograph them or make some kind of documentation? And that's all I'm thinking. So thank you very much for your answers. And
Yeah, you're welcome.
Does anyone else have a question? I see Scott, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if you should be familiar with the Kolikoli Bridge.
Yeah.
That steel structures that border both sides of that bridge, is that permanent? Because it wasn't there before they started on the bridge. I just wondered if that's the permanent.
Oh, no,
support
that's a
for it.
temporary. I know that
Oh,
one.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's a temporary because the bridge deck is insufficient for the loads, right? So it's a temporary support.
All right, thank you. I was just
Yeah.
wondering if that would be considered one permanent thing, like
No,
a tier
no,
3 or whatever. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
that wouldn't even, that project wouldn't even fall into this PA.
Oh,
Because it's
Because
too
it's
extensive.
It's too extensive, right? That was a big project, like high visibility. There's no way that would have went into this PA.
That would have had to gone through regular section 106.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what
100%.
happens when the PA doesn't apply or the work is too extensive. It gets kicked out of this automatic review and approval. It has to go through regular consultation channels. It goes through State Historic Preservation Division. It comes in front of you again. They have to do full section 106.
Yeah, the goal is to not even know repairs were done,
Right.
right? So like, this is an issue, right? Loading issue, we fixed that. Fix this down here, not doing a whole bunch of stuff with this, new paving, right? This, and like to pave the road, you gotta go through 106, right? And that takes a long time, but it's paving the roadway. Like, that's an easy task that we should just be able to allow and streamline that process.
Yeah, and document what you did,
document
right?
what you did,
Let Shifty know
Right, like
that it was done.
technically for this debris removal, like technically, we should be letting Shifty know that we're having to do this at this bridge. So there's a lot of activities that we're doing that are not getting reported. And so this is to help with that.
All right. Thank you.
Kevin, I see Kevin with his hand up.
Aloha, thanks. Staff question. This PA is good for 5 years currently. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have there been discussions about upon renewal, if it's working out great and all that, having that the next one be for a longer period? The reason I ask is we have, I've seen it with the public access MOU with National Park where, 5 years comes and goes kind of fast, or can. So yeah, just a question about duration. If that's been discussed. And I guess the vein of my question is within that collation of the batch forms, the 6 month to the year, and sort of just confirming that it's an intentional, that this is the first PA and it's intentionally sort of going to be monitored for how well it's doing, right? And then is there a possibility that the next one would be longer than 5 years to make it easier?
Pua, I think you should answer that one.
Okay. Yes, there is a possibility. We've talked about it. It will depend on how well this one goes, that we follow everything correctly, because it's going to be up to Shifty. But yeah, 10 years would be better. It's come up how fast 5 years goes by.
Right. Okay. And then because these forms are getting sort of collated and then passed to Shifty, all that before work starts, I guess one of my questions is.
No, not before work starts.
Not okay. Okay, not before work starts. So in the off case or worst case scenario where repairs need to be made to the repairs, does that all just turn into a contract issue? Or how's that been? The assumption is that the manual will always be followed because the form is filed correctly. And the contractor's then obligated to complete. So that's I guess I'm asking about enforcement. If there's any varying method of enforcement along with the PA.
Yeah.
Or not.
The enforcement would really fall on the certified project manager to use this PA, right? So it's up to them to follow through, make sure the repairs were done appropriately. Now, if it's a tier 3 activity, which falls under the purview of the SOI is responsible for that. And SOI is also responsible for signing that form as well, that compliance form, right?
The SOI professional.
So the compliance form would be started in the initial scoping work of the bridge repair activities, right? It would be started, but it wouldn't be finished until the project was done. And then submitted to Shifty and then to.
Oh, I see.
Or to HDOT and then to Shifty.
Okay.
At those intake periods, yeah.
And the certified HDOT project manager will have to receive training on how to use the PA and the guidance manual and such. Is there a prior requirement to become an HDOT certified project manager that provides them a foundational base for historic preservation so they better understand that, or is that sort of built into the, I know the training's upcoming and everything, so don't need to answer too much. I'm just
Yes.
curious.
And I mean, these are questions that FHWA had as well as
Okay.
Shifty when we met with them. Everybody had the same concerns about the training. So we've developed a scope of work for the training, which will be included in our revisions here to this document. Okay, it spells out, it tells you how long it'll be, like a 1-day training. Prior to that training, we are gonna recommend or require that they take a 106 introductory course before they take our specialized training on the PA. So we're talking,
NPS or NCP, the National Center for Preservation Training and Technology, offer those periodically.
so we're talking about maybe a day and a half or so-ish, 2 days of training that somebody would need to have a certificate and pass. So our specific training, you have to take an assessment at the end of the day and pass with a 70% to get your certificate to use this PA.
Great. Thank you. That answered.
And Kevin, I wanted to answer your first question a little bit further. If we don't control our contractors, then we don't get to use the PA, because after 5 years or before, if it's blatant, then Shifty's not going to let us. That's why we have every 6 months we have to turn in the forms and
That
see how
makes sense.
rich. Yeah.
And I see Kealoha has his hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, aloha. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. First of all, I think this manual is really great, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this. And I understand that it's pretty focused on repairs and infrastructure, maintenance, and preservation of the historic qualities of these bridges themselves. But they also cross over cultural spaces, right? All of these places that they're crossing, and I saw some language in there about consultation with community members, but I wasn't able to find sort of more explanation about that, and I wonder if you had more information on it. And I guess it's a little orthogonal to kind of the sort of direction of this manual, but I wondered how sort of a celebration of these cultural spaces may be part, of the repair actions that take place. In previous meetings, we have talked about, little plaques and so forth to kind of talk about, maybe not only the sort of period architecture of the bridge, but also where that bridge is and what that space means to the people of Hawaii and people of this area. Maybe I missed it. It was a pretty big document. I was trying to look through all these different attachments, but I wondered if you could sort of speak to sort of the cultural resources of the geography of the area where these bridges are crossing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Generally, we are trying not to disturb anything in the ground, right? That was a big takeaway early on in our consultation efforts. There are a lot of sites that aren't known around the bridge, and so going back to that archaeological clear zone, if we can, when they installed the bridge, there was a lot of that was disturbed back then. But we're not gonna say you go ahead, you have carte blanche to go do everything you want. We're gonna confine it to the work activity as close to the structure as needed be. And so we think that's a fair ask of how we're presenting that archaeological clear zone, and we're calling it that pointedly so that way it's not it's not a buffer zone. That's what we had it called before. It's the archaeological clear zone. But yeah, we don't want to do ground disturbances if we don't have to. So that is we took that recommendation seriously, and I think we have a good a reasonable idea of how we can handle that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Not exactly. I was thinking of more of like the mo'olelo of the stream area, the story of that stream area, the place, how this infrastructure is passing through, like, a vahipana,
Yeah.
space.
It's
So
mostly,
I
these are
wanted to hear
minor
more
repairs.
about how that might be integrated into sort of the repair and maintenance of these spaces,
Have no requirement in the programmatic agreement for the development of additional interpretive materials as mitigation at this point. But your comment is noted. That sort of thing is more what we would see as proposed mitigation for a larger project. I mean, we're hoping that people come in and make these repairs and you don't know that the work was done. It's really to keep, to preserve the fabric of the bridge and just to keep them in service so that we don't have to go and replace them.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
That's kind of where we're coming from with this. It is really
But Mr. Kealoha, can I make a suggestion? Because we don't address the spaces that we're crossing over. But one of the things that's difficult with bridges is that mostly our Native Hawaiian groups aren't that interested in the bridges themselves. They're interested in around the bridges, right? But unless you participate in a bridge consultation, that never comes up, right? So this is the first time this came up and it's a really good question, because you're the first Native Hawaiian who has talked to us about this project. So I would just say that Barbara's right. These projects are no effect, so they wouldn't have mitigation on them. But for those projects, like all of the Hana bridges, for example, you're not from Maui, but you might have friends or family who are. And that would be a great opportunity to start looking at the mo'olelo of those places and maybe have the design of the bridge encompass those mo'olelo. In Aotearoa, they have a bridge that looks like a long canoe, right? Like a war canoe. It's amazing. And we never get to do that. So there's ways that you can address your question, but we've never been challenged to do it. So go ahead and challenge us.
I personally would like to see more of that. I mean, going back to Mr. Mahoney's question about Kolikole. I mean, Kolikole has like an unreal history or background of that bridge and how it was installed and or was, damaged by the tsunami, rescued, turned upside down, and then, it's like amazing history. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that question, Kealoha, and thanks for your responses, everyone. I saw Janet has her hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for those responses. And I was just thinking, I'm with the newly founded Department of OEV Resources with Maui County, and we are working with place names. And recently, our mayor had acquired a property called Ka'ahua'iwi. And that means the heap or pile of bones. And we have a Hawaiian language expert. So sometimes a place name can tell you, as Commissioner Kinney mentioned, a lot about what you might find there. And we did a field inspection last week and we found iwi in the gulch. So it's just one of those things. And I know that Pua just mentioned in Hana, but if we could even do a place name, just a basic understanding of place names can tell you a lot about the space. I know that these are archaeologically safe areas that have been scoured, but as we know, water can transport things, mauka to Makai. So just that's just something to think about, is if we can get someone to do place names of the gulches and the streams as well as the mo'olelo, I think that would be very helpful in understanding, and again, I'm a plantation geek, so I love the historic bridges and the tsunami and all those things that happened in modern times. I think that's very important to document, but I think it's also very informative to look at how they worked in the past and even just simply doing place names. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenna. Kule, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Just kind of a bit of a spin-off of what Kealoha is leading into. So I would love to echo that and say, although it may perhaps not be something that's recommended, here's an opportunity to maybe set a new course forward and that's part of a story, I think, to say, although it was not and is not required, we went ahead and we did this. So as to perhaps set example to say, why not? We should, we could. If it's easy enough, if it's a freestanding sign so that it kind of remains in tier 1 and don't have to be, or something to that effect where it's, and I don't want to say minimal effort because, to acknowledge and honor our vahipana, our places and spaces, our cultural landscape should be maximum kind of effort, not minimum, in my opinion. At the same time, though, I see, right, that best practices, all of the things that are set in place is to ensure minimal to no impact to place. And I love that, right? Kind of come in, you exit as if nothing ever happened. Kind of the actions of Menehune maybe where, they come in, they do their big feat and accomplishments, and the people wake up and, oh my gosh, these incredible building feats of the Menehune. So I see that, and that's my kai to want to come in and almost have such minimal effect that nobody really even know you guys was there and did the work. At the same time, if it can, I mean, that our names are indicative of so much. And so maybe at a minimum, and the inoa of the vahi, that kahavai, that stream, that all of it maybe, that it can be the name of the stream in this ahupua, in this moku, something to that effect that acknowledges, because none of us here are nameless. So much like our places, our streams, our mauna, our pu'u, they're not nameless. So I would highly encourage and I'm that's maybe not in my demeanor to challenge, but perhaps if it is an opportunity to go ahead and do something like this that isn't in the norm, that isn't in a requirement, by all means, shall we? Yeah, so that's kind of, and then I wanted to I think one of my other comments earlier on, or when we first had this, was looking at the vai. Right, this is a waterway, and so at Kiholo, whenever we work in the local, particularly, I'm actually looking at when we did dredging work that we had to have, and I know there's a name of it, but I don't really even know the name. There are those floaty things that it's designed to catch any debris or anything while we're doing the work, but in that way, the malama of the vai, as to, right, because going to end up wherever the water going go and it'll take it. So as again, that sort of intention of minimal impact on the aina and whatnot, but also the minimal impact or looking at the potential of what will the vai carry out and end up way far away from the actual site of work site. So mahalo oia vale no ko umaumanao. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kule. And I know, Ikaika, you'd mentioned before there was a response sheet that where we could kind of fill out something and submit back to you. I think maybe that's something we could incorporate into that, Kevin. Is there a process for that?
There is a comment sheet. Jean, you might want to help me out. I believe the deadline for comments, or at least the preferred deadline for comments, is March 1st. And as I understand it, ultimately, there's probably 2 avenues for you to comment, either one as a whole as a CRC, where we'd re-agendize and go over that, or as individual folks. Jean, does that sound?
That's correct, yes.
But we can, yeah, sorry, the comment sheet didn't go out with with these materials. So I'll get that back. I'll get that out. It's simple comment sheet, as you saw. But yes, I'll share, make sure you all have that.
So the members will get the comment sheet, they can fill it out, it'll go back to you and you'll provide it to HDOT. So.
Yes, we can, yes, work through, if you want to work through staff, we can do it that way. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I would like to request is
Yes, please.
that if there are any conflicting comments between you all, that you guys resolve them before coming to us, because we're not going to know what to do with that.
Totally understood. Yes, thank you.
Were there any other questions or comments anyone on the commission has?
Mr. Homey had his hand up, but I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think he might have been saying goodbye. I know he's catching a flight today.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Mahalo. Thank you for coming today and sharing. We really appreciate it. And we will work on getting you those comments back.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Nice to meet you all. Really appreciate it. Hopefully can see you guys in person one day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We hope.
We hope.
Mahalo.
And I believe that brings us on to item number 2, sunshine law training for boards and commissions. And Deputy Corporation Counsel Gene Campbell is going to provide a training on sunshine law and Robert's rules applicability and requirements. And I think there was some materials were provided reference as well.
Yes, thanks everybody. Before I get started on this, I have construction going on literally right outside my window. And so I want to ask you guys, are you hearing that? Is it disruptive? Do we want to postpone this or do you not hear it? Looks like I'm getting several people shaking their heads. It doesn't sound terrible to you. Okay. All right. My office is not the quietest place. I have a very loud air conditioner that I have no control over. And now I've got all kinds of stuff going on outside. But if you guys can't hear it, then we're totally good. And staff, can I ask you guys to share the screen with the PowerPoint? I invariably mess that up and show you something super random that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So if we could do that, that would be awesome. So we talked, I think last time and maybe a couple of times ago even, about doing some just brief training on the Sunshine Law and Robert's Rules of Order, both of which technically do apply to this commission. And this PowerPoint, once we get it up, is actually, yeah, no hurry, is long. It's like 39 pages long, but we can go really quickly through a lot of this. So it's not nearly as long and horribly boring as it looks like. So, okay, alrighty. So Sunshine Law. Yes, welcome to training. And I'm going to suggest that because it's hard to see now that we've got this pulled up, it's hard for me to see whether anybody's got their hand up or anything. So if I can ask, maybe either interrupt me just by saying something if you have a question, or hang your questions up till the end and we can cover everything all at once. But know that if you put your hand up, I don't see it. So that's just going to go away. So anyway, Sunshine Law and Robert's Rules of Order. And if you have questions that you think of afterwards, by all means, reach out to me at any time. So the Sunshine Law is a state law, and it is contained in the Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 92. Go ahead, next slide. So why do we have this? And this is one thing that I do whenever I talk to my boards and commissions, especially groups like this one that are essentially, for the most part, advisory. And it feels really awkward to be constrained by the Sunshine Law because it does have a lot of what feel like very heavy-handed requirements about what you can talk about, how you can meet, all of that kind of stuff. I ask you to keep in mind or bring to mind for yourself the section of the government that you trust the very least. And think about this law as it applies to them. And then it makes a lot more sense, because if you just apply it to the work that like you guys are doing, it's just super frustrating. And why on earth do we have to do this? But think about whoever in the government you trust the least. And then this makes more sense. So it's to protect the public's interest and make sure that in this case, the functioning of our boards and commissions are open to public scrutiny and public participation. So really it affects the public's right to know what the government's doing. And when you think about it that way, it makes sense, and it feels a little less horrible. So next slide. Alrighty. The important takeaway from this one is who is a board. Obviously, you guys are a board, you qualify, and so this one is very minor. You are in fact a board. So go ahead, next slide. Basic principles. So these are the real elements that we are trying to hit when we are working to comply with Sunshine Law. So every meeting has to be open to the public, and there's a few exceptions. Executive session, which in my history with you guys we have never done, or limited meetings, but those are few and far between, and I don't expect we will be conducting limited meetings. One of the most important things is that you guys are not allowed to talk about board business outside of an open meeting, with a few exceptions, which we will talk about later. You need, and this is when the how does the public know what's going on? The public has to be provided with notice. You have to accept their testimony, and you keep minutes so that people can look back and see what was covered. And then one of the most important pieces is that, and this is where on occasion you'll see me jump in your meetings and say, oh, stop, we shouldn't be talking about that. You guys are not supposed to talk about matters that are not included on your agenda. And the reason for that is the agenda that's published lets the public know what you're talking about. And so they can decide whether they're interested or uninterested, and can show up and either listen or testify or whatever. And when a board or commission goes off agenda, it's essentially having the equivalent of a private meeting, because the public didn't know that you were going to talk about that. And so they didn't have the opportunity to show up and say, hey, I'm interested in that topic. I have an opinion. I want to either know what you guys are talking about, or I want to tell you about what I think about it. So that is why occasionally you will hear me jump in and say, whoa, stop talking about that. It's to make sure that we comply with Sunshine Law and the public knows what we're doing. Okay, next slide. What is board business? And okay, I'm skipping the top here. Basically, this is everything that's on your agenda. And the reason that knowing what board business is important is because that restricts what you can talk about outside of your meetings, and effectively what you can talk about inside your meetings. So these are things over which the board has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. And the important factor, because that could be an awful lot of matters, right? Anything cultural in the county arguably could touch those first two things, but it's also required to be things that are either on your agenda or, before you, or reasonably anticipated to come in the foreseeable future. So, if there's, say, for example, something is at the planning department and it's about to come to you, that would technically be board business, even if it's not quite on your agenda, but we know it's coming. So it's within your authority and it's on your current or future agenda. Okay, next. Basically, every meeting has to be open unless there's a good reason under the law that it's closed. Next. So types of meetings, I think this is slightly less important, and I know we've covered this in the past. You have your traditional in-person meetings, your multiple site connected meetings, and this group typically meets remotely, although we are required to have the in-person site, which is where the planning department staff is sitting right now. So next step. Connectivity, as you guys, I believe, know, and thankfully we haven't really had trouble with, knocking on some wood. Because you are connected via, Zoom here, if we lose connectivity and we can't get that going again within 30 minutes, then we do have to cancel the rest of the meeting. Thankfully, that hasn't been an issue. So next. Visibility, and this is why we go through the little exercise at the beginning. The law actually requires that a quorum of the board members who are sitting online need to be visible. And that means that if you have more people than your quorum, 1 or 2 people, or whoever the extra folks are, could be with their cameras off, but generally it's nice for everybody to have your camera on. You need to be able to have your audio connection. And then let's see, I guess this doesn't quite cover talking about who's with you, but I think that's maybe a next slide. But the reason that we ask for who's with you is the law does require that that get announced. And then obviously the visibility does not apply if we go into executive session, which I think we'll talk about shortly. But executive session is a confidential portion of the meeting where obviously if we were in person, everybody else would be asked to leave the room. So the equivalent is you don't need to be visible then. Okay, next. So again, this is, what you do at the beginning of all of your meetings. Your chair announces who everybody is. You state whether or not you have anyone with you. You don't need to identify people by name necessarily, and certainly not if you have minors with you. Generally, it's a good idea to take votes by roll call. If it's something that's, completely everybody agrees, then we don't actually have to, so that's okay. And then the staff does record this, and that gets made available to the public. So next. You can, if you have somebody, and thankfully this also has not been an issue, if you have somebody who is super disruptive for some reason, whether it's either a board member or somebody who's presenting or testifying in front of you, that can be removed. Thankfully, we've never had that issue. Hopefully we don't. Next. Okay. Oh, this is sort of more of the same thing. The public does get to show up at the live location. And again, if the audio piece falls apart and we can't keep it up, then the meeting does get canceled. And apologies, this is sort of a slightly recycled presentation, so it's maybe not as smooth as it would have been if I had been able to get it completely up to date. So next. Okay, and this again goes to, the policy behind this of having the public know what you're talking about so that they know whether they want to show up and talk to you or listen to you. So everything that you're going to be addressing in a meeting needs to be on your agenda. Your agenda needs to be sufficiently detailed so that the public can read it and know what it is you might be talking about it. And thankfully, we have a fantastic staff who takes care of filing and posting of it. There are a few emergency exceptions. I think it's in most cases highly unlikely that you guys are going to run into those, so we're not going to go over those. But they do exist if we need them. Okay, next. Okay, it is possible to amend your agenda. Again, something that's extremely rare. And I think that the 2 carve-outs for things that can't be put onto an amended agenda kind of make it almost impossible to do. If it's something that's important, you can't amend your agenda. And also if it's going to affect a significant number of people, in which case that kind of leaves you only small manini things that you might amend your agenda for. And in that case, my recommendation is generally just save it for the next agenda. So it's possible, but we generally never amend the agenda. So next. Okay, everybody has the right to come in and talk to you. They can submit written or oral testimony. And if for oral testimony, especially for efficiency and fairness purposes, it's possible to limit your time, limit your testifier's time to, I think typical in our county is 3 minutes, but that is at the chair's discretion. Okay, and you should consider all testimony they receive. So what about when can you talk to each other? You are welcome to talk to each other about things that are not board business at any time. So if you run into each other somewhere in public, you don't have to run away and say, oh no, I'm not allowed to talk to you. The only things that are restricted are discussions about board business. So sunshine does not apply to when you see each other at the grocery store, if you're at a party together, if you're at anything else together, so long as you're not talking about board business. So next. Non-board, you are a representative of this group and by extension, a representative of the county. The public knows that in many cases, and you are welcome, unless you are talking about confidential matters, which we don't have many, you are welcome to discuss your work here with the public. So the limitations on who you can talk to and what you can talk about do not mean that you are not allowed to talk about board business with non-board members. You're welcome to talk about board business with the public, so long as it's not something that comes out of executive session, which again, we virtually never do. And I don't think you ever get much more that's truly confidential information. So
Same applies for staff, Jean?
Same applies. Well, the Sunshine Law does not apply to you as staff members.
No, I meant that they're free. When you say non-board member that they're free to talk to, that also includes staff, not just the public.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The staff is a non-board member. So if you have questions about board business, want to talk to the staff about board business, you are welcome to do so. So yes, good catch, Kevin. Thank you. Okay, next. Two of you can talk about board business outside of a meeting to seek information. So long as you are not making commitments about voting one particular way or another. And you also, the law does prohibit serial communication. So if one of you were to call each person and talk about each other board member and talk about the same thing, that would be a serial communication. Or if you were to kind of do like telephone like we used to do when we were in elementary school, I call one person and say, hey, you call the next guy, and we all talk about the same thing through that kind of serial communication. We can't do that. But otherwise, you are welcome to talk to one another. So you are allowed to, this is kind of awkwardly worded here, but you are allowed to go back, you are allowed to attend outside meetings with other groups. So say Shifty has a meeting that is of interest to this group. Two or more of you could attend a meeting like that, so long as it's less than a quorum. And so long as that meeting, that outside meeting, was not specifically organized just to be directed to this group. And again, the usual no commitment to vote in a particular way. And then if it's something that is of interest, you should bring that information back and report it to the full board. So next. Permitted interaction groups. I haven't seen this group do a whole lot with permitted interaction groups, but it's certainly a useful tool. It's a process that allows a small group of you, so two or more, but less than a quorum again, can go out and do some sort of work together on board business. So the way it works is it's a 3-meeting process. At the first meeting, you will identify the members of the group and the work that they're going to go out and do. They'll go out and take as long as they need to do that work. And then once they are ready to come back to the full group, at the next meeting, they will report their findings. There can be no discussion about that report at that meeting. And then you need the third or subsequent meeting to actually have a full board discussion or any decision making about that report. This is how an awful lot of other groups do site visits. And I know that site visits have come up with this group quite a lot because it does seem like there would be, a lot of value in getting together on site somewhere. The general rule is if you are going to hold a meeting on site somewhere with all of you, it is just simply an open public meeting. Which would mean that any of the public who wants to come and attend are welcome to do so. That obviously can get problematic depending on lots and lots of circumstances, like whether your landowner is okay with holding a public meeting on their property, whether you are visiting a site that may be particularly sensitive for some reason or another. So that is where it gets difficult to all sit down in person somewhere outside of a typical meeting space. But if you want to do site visits with smaller groups of you, the permitted interaction group is a good way to do that. Next. You are allowed to talk to one another about your board's elections. So should you want to, I'm going to say gang up on somebody, but not necessarily that, convince someone to be your next chair at, when it's getting close to the end of the meeting, you're welcome to talk to each other about your selection of board officers. You can talk to department heads and other people in the county, that kind of thing. And if in the event we have a meeting a regular meeting that's called, and we expect there's going to be quorum, and for some reason quorum does not show up that day, we can't actually hold the meeting. But should you have public testifiers who came and wanted to testify, they are allowed to testify to the limited number of people who are here. And then that testimony would be passed along to the full group at the next meeting that does actually have a quorum. So in the event that we do have to cancel a meeting due to lack of quorum and we have public testifiers in the room, so to speak, we are allowed to take their testimony. Okay, next. Executive meetings, again, I haven't seen you guys need this, but it is an option. They're closed to the public. A motion is made in order by one of you to say, hey, I'd like to go into executive session. It requires a vote. You articulate the reason. You know, you have legal questions, for example, that would be ones that are inappropriate to have a public discussion about. So it's an option. Next. These are you can go ahead and just dump all these in here all at once. These are the legal reasons that you're allowed to hold executive session. You guys don't investigate criminal misconduct. You don't make personnel decisions, so most of these don't apply. Typically, I would think if this group needed it, it would be to seek legal advice that you think might be problematic for some reason to have an open public discussion about. Again, I haven't seen you guys do that, but it is an option if we ever need it.
Does that include let's see. Does that thing have to be on the agenda to call an executive meeting item?
It should be. Yes, it should be that it's a possibility that executive session might be requested. It wouldn't necessarily be, because you never know exactly when you're going to need it. And to be honest, I will admit I have not looked closely at our agenda to make sure that that is an option that's on there. But typically you don't necessarily know that you're going to run into an issue. And so the best practice, and again, admitting that I have not checked our agenda to make sure it's there in case we need it, but we haven't ever needed it. You ought to have something that says, should an executive session, be requested, it's possible. But, or if like sometimes you will anticipate that that's going to happen. And one of the examples I can think of is when the litigators in our, our office are making a presentation to the county council about a particular lawsuit. That's something that the council isn't going to discuss with their lawyers in public. So it will actually be agendized as an executive session. So sometimes it's coming, sometimes it happens spontaneously. So yeah. Okay, next. Okay. Things that don't qualify as for an executive session is just something that's embarrassing or personal. Let's see, not unless it is, yeah, okay. So unless, and again, not something that you're likely to cover. And this is what we just covered. Okay, next up. So thankfully we have a fantastic staff. You are required as a group to keep minutes, and you have a fabulous staff who does all of this for you. The law tells them what goes into your minutes, and they do a great job of preparing those, and all you guys need to do is review them and make sure they look good and approve them each time. So next. And that's everything that I wanted to cover with you about the Sunshine Law. And so technically as well, all county boards and commissions, and including the county council, all technically sort of make an attempt to follow Robert's Rules of Order. Some groups follow it more closely than others. I think for you guys, it's okay because this is a less formal group. I don't think it's super important to follow Robert's rules to the absolute letter, but it is here to provide some efficiency and structure to the meeting. So we will do a few points in Robert's rules. So again, generally it's to have an efficient meeting and kind of make sure that it follows a structure. So typically there is a main motion that's made by a member, it's seconded by somebody, and that opens up discussion. Before you can actually have a discussion, the motion ought to be made. So again, every now and then I will jump in and say, "Ooh, we don't have a motion yet. Can I get a motion before we actually have a discussion?" You have that debate, and then finally you take a vote. And it is a majority of those who are at the meeting currently, not a majority of your entire number of your board. So basically, you can, whoever is at the meeting, a majority of those people is all it takes to take a final action. Okay, next. Your chair. We've had a series of very good chairs. Your chair maintains order and facilitates the meeting, and again, provides structure and efficiency. Next. Everybody has an equal right to participate. We try and apply the rules consistently so it's fair. Remarks should be contained to whatever's on the floor at the time, and then we don't really maintain limits of debate. That sometimes limits how many times one person can speak, and we have not had issues that we needed to enforce anything like that. Okay. A motion is a formal proposal to take an action. And so this is why every now and then you'll hear me say, ooh, we can't just have a motion to discuss, because discussion is what happens when about a motion that you have. So a motion might be, we'd like to submit testimony. We'd like to write a letter, those kind of things. And then that action allows you to have a discussion about what's going to go into that. Okay. A member, we've already done this and you know this, a member makes a motion, somebody seconds it. If we're being really formal, the chair will restate the motion. I don't think that that's always entirely necessary, but it will help the minutes. And sometimes you will find, and Kevin is extremely good at this, he will restate the motion at the very end to make sure it's clear when you're taking a vote. Okay, next. Call for the question. This is not something I think you guys need to do, but if debate is taking forever, somebody can actually call for a question and say, hey, it's time to vote is essentially what that is, but you guys have not had any reason to use that. So let's move on. You can also postpone things to a certain time, decide that, we're not ready to vote on something, or we're not ready to handle a matter. You can postpone something to a later time. Next. You can amend a motion, and this is something that we have worked with a little bit with you guys. So say somebody made a motion, and as you've gotten through discussion, you're finding that the original motion isn't really exactly what you wanted to have happen. At this point, you really have two options. And I think because of the way, and because most of the work that you guys do is a little bit less formal, I think for you, it works pretty well to just kind of mush the whole thing around as you're doing. But technically what happens is, and I think of amendments as, I think back to those math equations we had to do in algebra class that I hated, where you have stuff in parentheses within the main thing. So you have a motion on the floor to do a thing, and that's your outside parentheses. And then you get partway in and you go like, that wasn't quite right. We want to amend it. Now you have two motions technically on the floor. One is the main motion, and the second is the motion to amend your main motion. So what you do is you discuss the amendment and vote on the amendment, and then you move back to sort of your outside parentheses, your main motion. So when you take the vote on the main motion at the end, it's going to be that main motion amended by whatever you voted to amend it. The other option, so jumping ahead, I think hopefully withdrawal is the next thing on here. Maybe, not, okay. You can always take a recess if we need it, if we need a break at any point. That doesn't close the meeting, it's just a temporary pause. So next. Withdrawal of a motion. So the other way, if you find through discussion that your motion that's on the floor really is not what everybody wants, is the maker of that motion can withdraw it at any time, so long as you haven't voted on it yet, and say, you know what, we were gonna, whatever it was, you don't like your motion. The maker can withdraw it, and then somebody new or the same person can make a new motion that is closer to where you think you want to go. So basically, once you have a motion on the floor, if you're finding that it doesn't feel quite right, you can either amend it or you withdraw it and make a new one. And I think that gets us pretty close to the end of this. Yes, that is the end of that. And again, I don't think that it's incredibly important that we follow Robert's rules to the absolute letter. That said, we do need to follow sunshine. That one is state law, and we don't have a lot of flexibility there. So that is everything that I have. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you're bored stiff, I apologize. And you're welcome to ask questions at any time as well.
Mahalo, Jean. We appreciate the information. Anyone, any questions?
All righty.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
I think that brings us to announcements. Any announcements or updates from the commissioners that are not related to decision-making business items on the agenda? All right. Moving on from that, administrative matters. Approval of minutes from January 8th, 2025. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Cultural Resources Commission meeting held on January 8th, 2025? Please.
I move to approve the minutes.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, it was moved by Commissioner Six and seconded by Commissioner Kurashima. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes approved as circulated. Staff, do you have any updates? Looks like maybe there's some bills.
There is, I'm gonna just throw them up on screen if I can share correctly. Let's see if it'll actually share the slideshow though. No, that won't.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's there. Okay, y'all see that? I just wanted to put this as a sort of a courtesy copy in case any of you weren't tracking or you're interested in bills going through the ledge right now. The one probably most salient up at the top, there's 4. So I'm presenting these just as FYI if you want to look them up. And I can send you an email with the links as well if you want to read the actual language, but it's just an FYI to see what there may be interest in or not. 2 of the bills this ledge dealt with definition or are trying to deal with definition of historic structures. There's another one about port heritage sites. The one that when I'm checking this morning, the one that's moving forward is SB 15. So I pulled that one up first. That one expands changes the definition of historic property, whereas before it was just 50 years. Now they're adding some significance criteria. Folks seem to be in support of that so far. They passed it it's moving its way through the committee and they're finding it appropriate, and HHF is providing, they've testified they're generally in support too. They do note typical implementation questions for them. So if I were to highlight one, it would be SB 15. This is SB 575. And here's the summary language for what it requires DLNR to do, and it gives them the third party option. 578 is the other one that is attempting to amend the definition of historic property. And the final one is 195 having to do with the port heritage sites. Puts it on DOBOR to actually take a little bit more. It's a maritime archaeology sort of thing. So I haven't read it all, but it seems like it's a continuance of things like, hey, pay attention to bridges. We also have archaeology underwater, maybe that sort of thing. That's it. Those 4. I can follow up with an email with the links if you don't know how to or aren't comfortable with navigating the ledge site. I can get that to you after the meeting. And then between now and next meeting, if any of you want to follow up with me, and it sounds like there's any interest in commenting or testifying, then we'll deal with that. But yeah, just an FYI.
Mahalo, Kevin, and yeah, please send the links. And
Okay.
any questions for Kevin before we move on?
Sure.
Okay. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. Staff, are there any additional announcements?
No, sir. Oh, sorry, for the tentative meeting. Yes, April 9th would be us skipping March. And just want to make sure that's okay.
Is there nothing on the agenda? Is that why, or is it?
Well, what, for March?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I oddly just got a request from PUA, who we just heard about, and you heard them mention the 2024 bridge inventory list. So she's asking, is it possible to schedule that for March? It would be March 12th. Gene, I think you're out. So that would be the only, so we could do it in March. But to answer your question, no, prior to just now, I didn't have any agenda items, but who had just emailed as a follow-up. So we could have a March meeting and have HDOT back.
Can we discuss that, Gene?
Yes. Yes. And the fact that I'm not here is not material to whether or not you guys have a meeting.
I know we missed a bunch of meetings at the end of last year, and we discussed maybe if we didn't have anything on the agenda, maybe the commissioners could come up with something that we could talk about. Any discussion on that? Do you guys want to have a meeting on the 12th and hear about the bridge inventory, or try to add something to the agenda?
I don't have a problem putting the bridge inventory on, and yeah, if anybody else has additional items, that's fine. We have been trying to maintain the monthly cadence. Historically, we do bi-monthlies, but yes, and then there's been gaps, yes. So totally up to y'all.
Okay. And if we miss that agenda, are we in danger of losing commissioners? Because I know at least Natalie and Scott, you guys are only here for 3 months or something.
End of March. So yeah, it might be a good idea to have March.
Yeah, I'm going to say if we can, let's just continue it. Let's have a March one.
Okay.
And if you need stuff for the agenda, maybe we can come up with something to add on to that.
Well, it'll give an opportunity. We'll see what, I can probably give another ledge update as well. And between now and when the agenda comes out, again, y'all can work through myself or Kim. If stuff comes up and you want to put something on, absolutely. Something additional. Yeah. March 12th, right? It's 12th.
Oh, and I'm sorry, but I just looked at my calendar and I probably won't be there at the 12th meeting on March 12th because of prior commitments. So if that's another consideration, let me know. But yeah, I think I will not be able to attend on the 12th. All right. Anything else? Anyone want to add anything before we adjourn?
So if you're not here on the 12th, then it would be Uncle Des. And if he can't make it, we'd assign somebody else, right, Gene? Yeah. So that's fine. We can go ahead and agendize or plan to agendize March 12th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. This concludes the items on this agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Mahalo.
Aloha.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mahalo.